Welcome to another episode of Roll or Die. Today's guest is coming to us from Hobart, and he is a fourth degree black belt. We love the Portuguese accent. It's been a while since we've had a Brazilian on. So he comes to us by way of Brazil, then Sydney, then Gold Coast, then Hobart. He's a fourth degree under fusion. We are looking forward to getting to know Fabio Glazer. Thanks for joining us, Fabio.
Thank you. Pleasure to be here with you guys.
Thank you so much for coming on, Fabio. We were having a chat a little bit earlier, and I started jiu-jitsu when I was 45. I started for my 45th birthday. That was my present to myself, and my body hasn't been the same since. But you started when you were 30, right? And then that, like for you, that was probably considered, being in Brazil, probably a little bit older. Is that sort of correct?
Yes, at the time, I remember when I first started jiu-jitsu, I was 30 years old, and my first instructor in Brazil was actually a purple belt, and I remember looking at him and going, "Oh my, if I can get to the purple belt, I'll be so happy in my life. I'll be a very accomplished individual." So it was funny then, because yes, he was considered a bit late for to be starting jiu-jitsu at 30.
And then how did you go in terms of progressing? Firstly through jiu-jitsu, and then what brought you to Australia?
Yeah, it's funny because I've actually, when I've had so many different stages in my life, and at the time in Brazil, I was actually I used to have a sushi bar. I used to be a sushi chef, and I was doing sushi, and Brazil, all the economical instabilities in Brazil, things weren't going that great, and I had a friend of mine actually coming to Australia, and she's like, "Oh," and I'll say, "Oh, I'm tired of Brazil, this and that." And she's like, "Why don't you come to Australia with me?" I said, "Well, what's in Australia?" I said, "Oh, look, my husband is there and he works as a laborer and he makes like $1,000 a week." Like, what? I wasn't making $1,000 a month. I said, well, maybe we should try it. So yeah, and I used to be back then. I used to play squash and coach squash as well. And so I had a connection with the New South Wales squash. They end up, helping me with all the legalities of visas and everything to come over. But nothing really connected to jiu-jitsu. I ended up coming to Australia. I was training jiu-jitsu, but not really, nothing actually connected to jiu-jitsu. But my first years of jiu-jitsu in Brazil, I was training under Tony Khan, which is Bamboo, which is a black belt from Rickson Gracie. He actually the guy who gave me my blue and my purple belt as I kept on going back to Brazil. And from since I arrived, every year, every second year, I was trying to go back to Brazil, and I kept going back to him and training with him. And so it was funny because I first arrived in Australia 1997, and way before any of the Brazilian black belts arrived in Sydney. So I was here before Marcelo Rezende from Gracie Barra, Bruno Pano from Gracie Maitá, or even Paulo Guimarães from Root. So I saw all these guys arriving, and it's a funny story there because Marcelo ended up in my neighborhood. Marcelo Rezende from Gracie Barra. So obviously I went to train with him. But I was really, really good friends with Paulo Guimarães from Roots. So we used to serve together and do all these things together, but I was training with Marcelo. So yeah, it was a funny beginning in the beginning because we didn't have any black belts to train with. And so we used to get all together, and gather in a gym. And I remember there was Tom Levano, I think his name was. He was a very high level Kyokushin karate guy in Manly, where I ended up landing in Sydney. And we used to hire the mats from him just so we could get together and train. And the very first really gathering that we had from people from all over different suburbs in Sydney was in the PCYC in North Sydney, where we had Chris the Weaver. Oh man, there were some old names there. We had Tom, some old Brad, and all these old guys that at the time we were all white belts, one stripe, two stripe, but we just wanted to roll, and that's all we wanted to do, roll. That was all. So it was funny in the beginning because we had no guidance. We were just going on our own and trying to make the best of whatever we brought with us from wherever we came from.
So in those early days, especially in Brazil, Fabio, that was like the old school jiu-jitsu, right? Is that sort of correct? It wasn't like the sports sort of style that, for instance, that I do now. That was kind of the slaps and the stand-up stuff and the self-defense. Is that kind of where you
Is that
started?
that's why you guys call it no gi now? So back in the day, I remember I was telling that to my students the other day. It was a very hot day, and I rocked up at the gym, and so hot, no air conditioning. God, air conditioning was like my non-existent. And we go like, what are we gonna do? It's too hot to wear gis. Gis off. Let's train some slaps, and this thing should, if you train jiu-jitsu, you should be able to use it as a self-defense martial art. So I'm very big at it, and even today, and I have every Monday in my gym, instead of teaching fundamentals, we've got a class which is self-defense for jiu-jitsu, and it's just really teaching people the basics of how to use jiu-jitsu in a street situation, which I think is really important. You know what I mean? I think it doesn't matter the color of the belt you wear. You on the street, somebody slap you, you can't stop it. You can't, defend yourself. What is the point of that belt in your on your waist? You know what I mean? So for me, it's really back in the day was really that with no gi would be gis off, slap, slap, slap. We do rounds. We had those healthy rivalries, we used to call them, where you could call somebody out and go, "Yeah, I got a beef with this guy today. Let's roll." You know what I mean? And slap, 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 always with the good instructions of the black belts or whoever was teaching, going, "Yeah, yeah, yeah. Now he's still good. Keep going, keep going." Like even when you're slapping the guy, and it's like, "No, stop, stop. No, no, you're right, man. Keep going, keep going." So he was very different back then, and to be honest with you, this is one of the things that I carry with a lot of pride because there was, different time. I'm not even saying it was better or worse. It was just different, but made us more resilient. I reckon it made us be more aware of this, how to incorporate jujitsu for self defense. You know what I mean?
Fabio, you mentioned Paula Guimarães. We've had him previously on the show.
Did you? Did you survive
Yes,
that,
yeah, we've been just we
Pablo?
did we did.
I love you.
He had lots of stories to tell.
Yeah.
He became your first coach in Australia, or how
No,
did
I've
that
actually,
happen?
when I
No.
first started in Australia, as I said to Marcelo Rezende from Gracie Barra, he opened his gym in Manly where I was living. So it was pretty much a no-brainer, you know what I mean? At the time, and I had no car, nothing. I was just starting my life in Australia. So he was like 2 blocks from my house. So I went to train with him. And to be honest with you, although I'm not very big at the whole Gracie Barra thing, I have highly respect them, you know what I mean, for what they've done for jiu-jitsu in the world, not just in Australia. And I highly respect Marcelo as well. He was a great friend at the time. I spent probably around a year with him. I learned a lot from Marcelo. Marcelo was a very big influence in my jiu-jitsu and the people that I spent time with, like Guga Pinto. I don't know if you know Guga Gracie Barra from, I think he's in Newcastle or Central Coast somewhere in New South Wales. He's an amazing black belt. And many other guys that I've learned that I got to know from Gracie Barra. So I did Marcelo Gracie Barra for a year. Um, Gracie Barra wasn't really my thing. So I went to train with Bruno Pano, which was the guy that for me was my size, and his jiu-jitsu is another one. There's one thing that Sydney was very fortunate with was with the level of the black belts that first came to Australia to Sydney was Marcelo, Bruno, and Paulo. They were the pioneers pretty much, and they were so like all of them in their own way, very different jiu-jitsus, but they were really, really skilled in what they did, what they do. So I went to Bruno, but Bruno actually ended up. I was in the city with Bruno. He ended up moving to Maroubra, and again, it was just too far from me. And I ended up going like, Paulo, man, we are super friends, and he always used to annoy me. You surf with me, and you go train with Gracie Barra, man. And Gracie Barra used to say the same to me. You train with me, but you're gonna surf with the other guy. Jiu-jitsu politics, which was always super fun. And but yeah, I ended up being with Paulo. Paulo gave me my brown belt and my black belt. And I was with Paulo for 12, 13 years. Then I decided to do my own brand. We're still very good friends, me and Paulo. I bring him to my gym every time I can to run seminars because I really think that, I'm not really big with the politics thing, but lineage is something that I really recognize. You know what I mean? And I do go to back to Brazil. And I was talking to Brentus before offline here that I got my 74-year-old first black belt, who's a coral belt, obviously now, and Tony Khan, and he's 74 and he still rolls. You know what I mean? So I go back to Brazil. For me, I just like to sit on the mat with him and you know all the banter and all that stuff, and it's remember and reminiscing from stories, and it's great. So yeah, it was Gracie Barra, and then it was Paulo, yeah. But in the meantime, from 1999 all the way to 2006, probably, I was going to Brazil nearly every year and training with Tony Khan. And I got to spend a lot of time in Brazil training. And after that, when I became a black belt in 2008, 2000, from 2011 on, I've always carried 8 students with me to Brazil to train as well. So I've been trying to, I think, as much as we have narrowed this gap in Australia with the Brazilian Jiu Jitsu standards, we have narrowed drastically, and which is good, means that we are doing a good work in Australia about with Jiu Jitsu. But Brazil is still a certain level, especially with the gi. Yeah, there's certain things in Brazil that there are, there's the atmosphere of jiu-jitsu in Brazil is still something that I reckon that once you experience that, your jiu-jitsu is never the same again. You know what I mean? Because yeah, so that was pretty much my 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 journey in Australia. Yeah.
So can you tell us, you've trained at a few gyms, you've gone to different gyms, you have your own gym. Can you tell us, like, Fabio, what you look for in a gym? So whether you're, like a purple belt and you're kind of, maybe you're happy where you are, maybe you're moving to a different state, maybe you want to change gyms, maybe you're moving to a different country. So for someone who's now been around for quite a long time, what what do you look for in a gym when you go, to a gym, mate?
You mean looking for me to go train, or when I decide to
Yeah.
open?
Yeah, like if you were going to, so in those early days when you were going to a gym to train or swapping gyms or changing gyms, what stood out for you? What were things that you would look for?
Yeah. Brentos, you gotta understand the times were very different back then. We didn't have as that many options, you know what I mean? We were like, it's this guy or this guy. Or don't train, because if you don't like them both, you're pretty much screwed because you don't have anybody else to train. Yeah. So that it even you notice that even the black belts mentality had to change because of that. I remember coming late to training, my instructor would go, "Why you late?" "Oh, sorry, man, I was working." "Yeah, go back home." "What do you mean, man? I just took 3 buses to come here." I don't care. You're late to training. Go back home." You can't do that anymore today. The guy crosses the street, go to the next gym, goes train with the gym next door. Do you know what I mean? So it was very different what it is today. We weren't looking for, we couldn't look into so much depth to how and be so picky about what we were choosing to train, who we were choosing to train with, because there weren't many options available, you know what I mean? And it's either this guy or that guy or the other, and that's it. Nowadays, you pretty much, even in Australia, man, you go to Sydney, every suburb has at least 2 gyms, you know what I mean? Melbourne, God, there's so many gyms you guys got there. So today is different. I get all the drop-ins, the travelers in my gym. "Ah, look, man, is that okay if I come trade?" Of course. But obviously for them, they can sit on the computer at the airport and go, "Let me have a look at the gyms in Hobart." In 20 minutes, he makes his itinerary where he wants to train. Do you know what I mean? For us, it was different, man. Like, it wasn't really much of an option. But still, in saying that, there's always the affinity with the instructor. Yeah, so if you go to a gym and, "Oh, this guy is great. I can relate to this guy," you choose to stay there. But I had cases in my life that I'm like, "Oh God, what am I doing here?" But I had nowhere to run. You know what I mean? I had just to stay there and copy the machine. You know what I mean?
You mentioned Marcelo and uh, Paulo. I've done a little bit of homework, and can you tell me about the match that Paulo refed between Marcelo and Anthony Parash? And then he
I
gave
was there.
Anthony a
I
little
was
bit
right.
extra help, I believe. Can you
I
tell us about
That
that?
was a funny one because again, it was all you have to consider, put it in context. Yeah, so we had all these Brazilian black belts showing up in Australia, and we had all these Aussie guys who were at the time the guys in Australia, nobody, and all of a sudden there's just like, all right, so are you guys that good really? Are you black belts that good really? So there was this kind of like, who's gonna ascertain themselves more than the other, you know what I mean? And it was in Bondi in an open arena. Do you remember the year for that, Kim?
No, I've done some homework, but I don't know what
2000,
year it
oh
was.
look, it
We could
was
have asked.
early
We had
days.
Anthony on just a few weeks ago. We
Oh,
could have
did you?
asked him. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it was 2000, 2001, something really early. And they like everyone, and mind you, black belts, they didn't like to expose themselves that much back then. So when the Brazils arrived, all the Brazilian black belts arrived, they're like, well, how long can we hide? You know what I mean? We need to start putting ourselves on the line here to see. So they decided to go, yeah, let's just do this. So Marcelo decided to fight. It was on a small comp. There was this match fight, Marcelo and Anthony Peroshi, yeah. And oh look, man, it was at the time I was training with Marcelo from Gracie Barra, and it was very clear for me that the decision wasn't. It could have gone both ways, but if you follow today's rules, the points must have been given or the advantage. I can't remember. I think he turned on his knees and he didn't give advantage, something like that. Perosh ended up winning when he shouldn't have. The truth is, like for me at the time, the way I saw it, he shouldn't have. But again, it wasn't something like, oh my God, it's a clear win. It was like it could have gone either way. You know what I mean? So yes, it was a bit funny to that, and Marcelo was really upset with Paulo because it doesn't matter. I'm Brazilian, you're Brazilian. You should have given it to me anyway. So there you go. There was a little bit of the rivalry at the time. It was very, very funny. But there was another fight that was really back in Manly. There was a fight with Paulo fought Elvis in no gi, and again everyone was expecting. That was right after Marcelo's fight with Perosh, and everybody's like, "Oh, how's this gonna go?" But yeah, Paulo was in a very bad day that day, and Perosh ended up submitting him, and there was a big for the Brazilian jiu-jitsu community because there was this. It wasn't really a rivalry because they all got along at some level, but it's really how they are trying to ascertain themselves and who is who in this ladder. You know what I mean? And then other black belts came, Galizia and everything, and Galizia was destroying all everyone. I don't know if you remember Pedro Galizia. He was a black belt from Brasilia. He was in Sydney for not a long time, and he ended up fighting Pirosh and Elvis, I think, if I'm not wrong, and destroyed them both. So brought a little bit more of the balance to the thing. It was funny time. It was really nice. I miss those times. They were like, in spite of all the rivalries, and there were healthy rivalries as well. There was a little bitch behind, obviously, behind the backs, but when we got together, it was all in pro of like really, let's promote jiu-jitsu in New South Wales. And you gotta give it to these guys, man. And I've had the opportunity to work with New South Wales Federation for some years. I had the chance to actually interview Royler Gracie when he was here for the very first seminar. And 2 days after he lost to Mr. Ted Planet, what's his name? Uh,
Yeah, bravo.
uh,
Eddie
Sorry,
Bravo.
Eddie Bravo. Yeah,
Yeah.
remember when Royler lost for the first time to Eddie Bravo? 2 days later, he was in Australia, and Bruno go, "Oh, you need to go interview him. Like, just watch what you ask." I said, "No, I'm gonna ask it, man, because we all want to know what happened." You know what I mean? And I remember asking him, going, "What happened, mate? Could you just let us know what actually happened?" And he was super cool about it. He just, "Oh, look, man, I made a mistake. Looked the wrong way. Got me on a track. That's jiu-jitsu." He was very elegant about it, I thought. So yeah, funny times was like if that story. I remember so many of those stories back in the day when competition was just starting in Sydney, and yeah, people keep telling me you should write a book about it because it's funny because it's if you don't talk about it when you start talking about it, keeps coming back to your mind, but you stop talking about it, kind of fades away, isn't it?
Well, while you are on here, mate, you feel free to tell as many stories as you want because that's what it's about, and it's actually it's one of the comments that we get a lot um, on the podcast is, without this podcast, these stories don't get told, and then these
Sure.
stories go out there for people to learn, and, people that
Absolutely.
haven't been around the jiu-jitsu scene, and some names might be, yeah, oh, I've heard of that person, or somewhat, maybe
Yeah,
they are really clear on who these people are, but, this is a nice place for, the history of Australian jiu-jitsu,
absolutely.
to be formed a little bit, mate. So tell as
Yeah.
many stories as you want, Fabio.
But yeah, and for me, you're absolutely right. You hit the nail on the head, man. If you don't have these places where people can share this and actually, have a way to record it and save it, you know what I mean? So we can, another 20 years, 30 years, look back and go, "Oh, look at these dinosaurs talking about jiu-jitsu in Australia in 2000." But, this is what made what we are today. And to be honest with you, it's funny because for me, I've never been very in contact with jiu-jitsu in Melbourne. You know what I mean? I fought the Pampaks. Wow, what was that? When was the first Pampaks? I think 2000, 2001.
Yeah, something
Yeah,
like that.
I was
Yeah,
there, flight as a
yeah,
white belt. You know what I mean? And,
yeah.
and I remember
Maybe
meeting.
even the 90s, I think,
Yeah,
because it became part of the IBJJF, I think, soon after I started, but I think
yeah.
it was always a part of the AFBJJ
I think you're right.
for
It
a
was
while.
1999, the first one that I went.
Yeah, could be.
Man, the medals was like this big, but it's just little medal that you get. And like you would fight, like my fight was 7 o'clock at night, it was 11:30 at night. I was
Yeah,
sitting there waiting to fight.
I remember
Yeah,
those
it
days.
was, yeah, fun times. But I don't know much about the history of jiu-jitsu in Melbourne. I had a chance to meet Kid Dale some times ago when he was fighting Bruno Alves. He had a really big rivalry with Bruno Alves. I don't know if you guys remember that. I met some of some people now, especially coming to Tazi. I met a lot of people through Neil, who is one of my instructors at the gym. And yeah, but my whole history and story of jiu-jitsu comes from New South Wales, and this whole thing for me that I always had this really big. I used to be a customs officer in Sydney, yeah, for many years, and like it's a very safe, secure job, and you know what I mean. Everybody, oh, Fab, like you never leave that kind of job. It's a job that everybody's trying to get in, and I got to the point that I was having to choose between that or teach jiu-jitsu, and I went, no, I'll stick to that. And I sold my gym. Actually, I sold my first gym in Brookvale in the Northern Beaches to Thiago from Legacy, which became his first Legacy gym in the Northern Beaches. And and I went just to be a customs officer for 3 months. And I was the most miserable 3 months of my life. I was just there, waking up, going to sleep. Like, what am I doing with my life? I was already a black belt. And I called Paul and said, "Mate, I need to get back into the scene." He's like, and this is one thing that I always, loved about Paul. He's, as tough as people think he is, he's a softy, man. People don't know that. I know he comes, oh, yeah, 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 but he's the nicest guy. And for me, every time I said I want to teach jujitsu, he came up with a plan for me. You know what I mean? And I remember my first gym. I was a purple belt in Sydney, and I opened my first gym in Narrabeen. Narrabeen Beach. I hired a place from a gym there, and he came to me and said, "Come to my house. I got probably 80 plugs of mats for you to take to the gym, and don't need to pay me. You pay me." And I'm like, "Wow, serious? Like that was the biggest deal for you to open a gym back in the day to find mats. You know what I mean? You couldn't find mats. You know what I mean? And this guy just showed up with 80 plugs of jigsaw mats for me to actually teach. So, and after that, when this episode from customs, and I decided to quit customs, and I said, "Now I'm gonna go back into jujitsu." Come with me. He found a place for me to go teach jiu-jitsu. So I think this is what people don't understand, the relationship between you and your black belt. You know what I mean? I think it's not just a guy that is there uh, to teach you jiu-jitsu, because nowadays, more and more people don't rely only on their black belt to learn jiu-jitsu. You got YouTube, you got seminars, you got all sorts of internet courses you can buy here and there. So it dilutes a bit that relationship because you're not trusting that, you're not relying on that black belt so much anymore. And but for me, it was actually the opposite. I had fights with Paulo, but I had really good. It's like a family, isn't it? You fight with them, but they're still your family. You still, go back and make up with them again, and make sure that everything is fine. And Paulo always, I always say this. I learn a lot of things how to do with Paulo, and a lot of things how not to do with them. But they are valuable for me. You know what I mean? And I think this is what I try to give my uh, 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 students as well. It's not that thing of like, you shouldn't train anywhere else. Today, that it's you can't do that anymore as well. Cross training is it's a must today in any game. So, but what you have to instill in your students is, you, can you have loyalty to your flag? You know what I mean? In a sense of, this is my club. I'll help my club. I help my partners in my club to progress as well. And that is a sense that once you build that, you got a culture. Now you can actually look at your black belt as somebody that's not just teaching you jiu-jitsu, you know what I mean? And for me, that was, I'm old school, man. What can I say? I really like that. And as much as we try to implement new school stuff in my gym, there's a line. I was telling this to Neil. Now Neil's an amazing guy. I know Kim knows Neil as well, and I was telling him, because, Fab, how hard do we need to go with being, so diligent with, no, and strict with, like, bow when you enter the match, shake hands with everyone, clean kimono, trim nails. I say, Mike, if somebody comes to martial arts and don't want to do that, it's the wrong sport for them. You know what I mean? Because people come for us for discipline. People come, especially the kids. The parents bring them to us because they want some sort of structure to their kids. You know what I mean? So for me, it's that line on the sand that I never cross.
And can you tell us about speaking of funny stories, tell us about the time that you almost drowned convincing your mate to do jiu-jitsu in a hot tub?
Where did you hear that story?
I have my sources, so I won't share them.
Kim,
It's a
Kim
it's
is
a
brilliant,
secret.
mate. Research the backstories that Kim gets, mate.
All
She's
right.
brilliant.
My defense, it was my wedding day. All right. We were, like, I got married with my current partner, my wife, Fabienne. We've been together for, well, 13 years now, 14 years now. And we weren't married. And about in 2022, I was living in Hobart already. And I have a really good friend of mine. He's Aiden. He's in one of my neighbors. We connected straight away when I moved to Hobart, got him into jiu-jitsu. But he has this thing that when we go out, have some beers, he goes to me, I think I can take you now. And I'm like, okay, try. So this day, it was my wedding day. We to my wedding, we came back. We were absolutely drunk, sitting on the spa, and he went, I think I can take it now. And he jumped on me, and I pretty much unbarred him from under the water. And I wasn't him drowning; it was me. Yeah, I was under the water. He was actually out, and we just had the girls, the wives coming after. It was going. What are you guys, kids? There was no water in the bar, in a spa anymore, because we were jumping up and down and fighting each other in the spa. Yeah, it was a funny day. He had a sore arm for a week.
That's the way that you introduce your friends into jiu-jitsu, guys, like arm bars in the spa pool.
That was a funny one. Yeah.
Tell us about some competitions, mate. Like, you are a competitor, you do compete. Um, have you had, tell us about a match that maybe it really sticks out, one that you won or one that you lost or one that you were robbed in. I've just finished listening to Robert Drysdale's The Rise and Evolution of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu.
Yeah.
And there were two things one thing really that really stood out. And he talks about the biases that, the Brazilians always get the win from the Brazilian refs, and, they game the system and all that sort of stuff. But in the book, Rob is talking about there's actually a name for that. I can't remember it, but there's a name, and and one of the things he said is, like, if you watch, football, when Brazil are playing another team or whoever, like, they all do it, but you fall over because you might get a free kick, or you fall over because you might get a penalty, and he's like, so when we do that in jiu-jitsu, he goes, that's normal. Like, it's gaming the system, so tell us some competition stories, mate.
Oh my, look, I did compete a lot. I had some really big breaks as well because of injuries. But I had some competitions in Brazil, was some silvers. Never won really anything big in Brazil. I think my big competitions were always in Australia, with especially in the beginning. Uh, I competed from blue belt all the way to black belt. I think brown belt is the one that I competed last. 'Cause I was really injured. I had a detachment, rupture from my tendon, completely severed from my bone and my triceps tendon there. I was out for 6 months. Then I had my knee injury, another 6 months. So brown belt was a bit of a funny belt for me. But I like it. Look, I've as anyone, we always have the matches that you think you won and you didn't. But if I can remember one that stand out back in the day, I don't know if you guys are gonna know this guy. His name was Igor. Igor, and I was with Gracie Barra.
Was he in Melbourne? He was from Melbourne, yeah? Yeah.
Was he?
I think he was
I
because
thought he was New South Wales, but I
yeah,
don't know where he was
my
from.
ex-husband used to do jiu-jitsu, and I'm sure there was a guy at Peter DeBean with that
Yeah.
name,
Well, he
unless it's a
was a
different
I
eagle.
used yeah, he used to train in Paulo, and we had some really funny matches where slaps and this and that. But it was funny because I was training with Paulo, I was training with Marcelo, and he was training with Paulo, this Igor guy. And Paulo used to give it to me. "Ah, yeah." But when I moved to Paulo, one day I fought with Igor, and Paulo, like I said, "Do you remember the day you were giving me hips because I was fighting this guy? And look where we are now. You're here, my side fighting. That's just professionalism, fam. Be professional." Fair enough. But I think the best matches, like for me, in were I had a really good run. When I opened my gym on the Gold Coast in 2017, I've actually I was over 50, or I was 51, and I was in the middle of all these youngsters, uh, Vicente from Southside, and Fabio from Carlson Gracie, and so on and so forth. And they're all there, all established. Here I come from New South Wales. I knew everyone, but no one knew me in Queensland. And let's go. So who is this old man opening a gym here now? So I thought to myself, what better way of establishing my gym than put myself out there and go back to competing? And everything went perfect. But that was the best comp I had because I was coming back from probably 4 years without competing, and I jumped into the master division. I was your division at the time, master five, and uh, and I had this guy, Paul Slim, who had just won the worlds and a brown belt, and he got his black belt and came back to Australia, and I had Adam
At a
from Perth.
Metcalf. At a
Yeah,
Metcalf, yeah.
Metcalf. Yeah, which is a lovely man. I love Adam. He's so good. And we had this division, and like I'm a bit like scared, but I went to fight Adam and I won. But then I went to fight Paul, and I just remember I'm sitting at in Melbourne, and I'm about to enter. I mean, I'm just right mat side there waiting to jump on, and I looked up, and they had like probably 30 guys from Southside and Vicente. They all ran down and they screaming, and I was like, oh, we got a match. And there was and to be honest with you, I wasn't that fit. And the guy just came back from the worlds, and he was on fire, man. He was like, trying to pass my gun, put lock, I'm lock, and I just defend, 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 defend. I just remember I looked up, Chug was like, hey, he closed the gun, relax now. And I didn't even have time to relax. It was all over me. And I don't know what came over me. I said, "Man, let's do this." And I just like stood up, opened past his guard enough, just enough to get the points. Boom, 1, 2, 3, boom, he put me in half guard again. But I got the points. The ref was Brazilian. What can I say? And and we stay like that. And I actually got this photo that's a photographer took it from behind. The time was up, and I just went. I tell you what, man, that fight. It took me 5 minutes. I to I, nearly 5 minutes to stand up again because I could not breathe. Like I never had that feeling. I was like, I couldn't breathe, trying to hold this guy. I remember Thiago screaming, going, 10 seconds. I was counting in my head the 10 second, 9, 8. So, and I just could not breathe. It was crazy. And but I won the fight, and for me it was like from one of the best. When you're coming back and you fight somebody who's on top, like he was, and we became really good friends too, me and Paul, by the way. But yeah, I hardly carry rivalries off the mat. You know what I mean? I don't think it's worth it. I think we all, being gentlemen enough and challenging ourselves enough to jump on a mat and try. There's a level of respect to that. You know what I mean? And yeah, for me, I think that was my best match, man.
Fabio, I understand that you used to run training for coaches in Brazil of how to build student numbers. Can you tell us a bit about that?
Yeah, that's something I did a bit, and I'm back doing it now. I actually, obviously, with way more experience now. So Fusion, it's my seventh gym that I built in Australia. All of them still operating. All of them got sold at some point because that was never my intention to build gyms and sell them. I'm very loyal to my students, but life has funny ways of developing itself. And I've actually was tired of Sydney. When I moved to Sydney in '97, Sydney was a very different place, and I left Sydney in 2017 mostly because I was just like I was driving 3 kilometers to my gym and taking 45 minutes. You know what I mean? And I was like, what am I doing? I'm from Sao Paulo. If I wanted that, I may as well stay there. You know what I mean? And and I'm just like, nah. So me and my wife decided to go to the Gold Coast, and we went. We like no plans to move it back again. My wife's a midwife. She wanted to do a midwifery course back then, and so we went. I had my son living there, my grandson, and everything. So I was like, I'll just go do a summer stint on the Gold Coast, stay there. The gym took off so nicely as well. But every single gym that I've opened, I've actually had the intention of staying, but I didn't. So I built it up to the point that actually people were interested in buying them or staying with them. So I had training grounds in Sydney, which is still there. I had the only one, Legacy is still there. The only one that closed down, it wasn't my gym. I was only working that was Platinum Extreme. After that, I opened Legacy One, which before COVID, Legacy One became Legacy Two, which after COVID, which I sold to move to Tasmania as well. Here we open Legacy here, which when I moved back to the Gold Coast for reasons that or unforeseen reasons, I had to go back to the Gold Coast for a year. I didn't want to leave the gym here by itself, so I sold it, and it's still there. And they're my main competitors now because we're pretty much in the same suburb now. And but yeah, this I told my wife and I promised myself this is the last one. If you see me opening a new gym, don't let me, because it takes energy, man. It takes a lot of energy to run a club. People think, you live in the dream job. You come, you teach, and it is. I wouldn't change it for anything. I love what I do, but it takes energy. It's a long shift. You work from 6 in the morning to 8 o'clock at night. And if you don't have help, and until the point that you can build uh, help, it's hard. But all that experience gave me this knowledge, which I find my obligation to actually share with people. I think people always ask me, "What's the meaning of this life that we came here?" I think we're here to find our gift. You know what I mean? And the purpose is to give it away, man. You gotta give this away. You can't just hold it to yourself. You know what I mean? So for me, everything that I've learned, not just tactical jujitsu, positions, but how to actually. I love training coaches. This is for me one, and especially if they come from the bases. I've seen my white belts black belts and open the gyms, and man, there's nothing more satisfying than that. Especially when you hear them using the same phrases or sentences that you taught them in the past. You know what I mean? There's some degree of satisfaction and reward to that. You know what I mean? Because in the end, man, that's it. We hear, we learn, we teach, we learn, we teach, we go, we die. And what's the legacy you leave behind? It's these people carrying on. And
Yeah.
I put a post like that the other day. I can't, I'm still to see a better sport for you to actually develop yourself as a person, not just as an athlete, or see your kids get over some any issues that they have in their young lives. So jiu-jitsu, we were talking before we went on air about this, didn't we, Brandon? There's so much about jiu-jitsu that is meant to be given. It's not just the rolling is given, being fit, getting fit, learning how to fight, that's given in jiu-jitsu. If you just gotta show up. But there's so many, I learned so many other stuff in jiu-jitsu, so much more stuff that improved my life as a person, you know what I mean? And I feel like it would be selfish of me not to share that with people.
We had a young bloke called Jesse James Parr on the podcast last week who's 17. And both Kim and I, at the end of the podcast, were like, wow, like this young 17-year-old feels like he's got so much life experience. And on the podcast, he actually spoke about, and he said, like jujitsu gave me this. And he said, one of the reasons that he said I owe jujitsu so much is because it made me train with older people and younger people and men and women and this body type and that body type. He goes, such a broad range. And he said, but jiu-jitsu gave me that, and I think that's kind of what you're saying, Fabio. It's not just rolling, it's everything else that comes with jiu-jitsu. It's learning how to train with a different partner. It's not you just grab your friend and you do the same thing over and over and over. It's
Yeah,
not that, like
yeah,
Kim's smaller than me. I need to train with Kim. I need to change the way that I train. And
yeah,
then, Kim's training with a female white belt, so she needs to change what she's doing, and so all of that adaptation, it really makes you a lot more cognizant about what you need to do, so I think that's a
yeah,
big part of it. Yeah.
yeah. And it breaks barriers because, you as a 17-year-old kid, when can you see yourself rolling on the ground with a 70-year-old man or with a woman, where a woman that is like 20, 25, but most important, man, you know what this all teaches kids and us? Humility, man, because your ability to go, and I was talking about that to a friend of mine, my student, that 0 to 100 kind of guy. He trains exactly the same way with everyone, does not have any understanding that he should not have to smash a girl that's 30 kilos lighter than him. But that's what I'm saying. When you look at your partner and go, I'm gonna adapt to that person, that's humility, man. That's empathy towards that person. You know what I mean? Because oh my, this list for me, as I said to you, the technical aspects of jiu-jitsu for me, they obviously are amazing. I'm a confident guy on the street. You know what I mean? But it's all of that. Is that this? The old saying that jiu-jitsu instructors are not just jiu-jitsu instructors. We are psychologists, trainers, babysitters, whatever that is. So there is so much more stuff that we give to our members, our students on a daily basis. And I still to see a sport that does this so well as jiu-jitsu does. Yeah. And I've been around the sports. I've surfed my whole life, played soccer my whole life, played squat. So do you know what I mean? There's something, isn't it, about jiu-jitsu that is this bonding thing that gets us so addicted to that stuff and wanting more. Like we had 18 times 3 minutes rolls on Saturday preparing for comp. So we roll with 30 seconds break in between. We roll 54 minutes in an hour. And by the end of it, we couldn't even talk, but everyone had that little smile in their faces. You know what I mean? How do you explain that, man?
What
If you
what you're
haven't done,
saying, Fabio, it sums up. I think also I understand that your nickname is Master Yoda.
yes,
So
no
this
wonder
makes
why.
sense. No, not
That's
for your ears. I think for your wisdom as
I
well.
don't know. That's what. Well, actually, this nickname comes from my kids. I got a black belt son. Yeah, my son Felipe. He runs. He he's one of the business partner that bought my gym on a Gold Coast now, and he's now look, he's grown up with me, beating him up every day. Come on, get out of there, get out there, get out. And now he does that to me actually. So it's for me. They're the ones who actually came up with his nickname. My son, my sons, because I always had this little speech that I had to do to them. Like, yeah, Master Yoda, here we go. Yeah, yeah. Look, I take it on my stride. I love it. I love giving back, and I can take it too. I don't think it's all part of the fun.
Do you know how many black belts you've given out now, Fabio?
Ooh, I was thinking about that. say around 40 to 50 maybe. Yeah, which is good. It's funny for me. It's like it's not what I've given, but where are they now? That's what I look like. Are they still training, or if not even teaching? Because teaching is very particular. You don't. Sometimes you get your black belt, but you're not really into that stuff. But uh, are they still training? That's the thing for me, you know what I mean? And I think most of them are, life again, gets in the way sometimes. People go do different things, but a lot of my black belts still training, which is, but to be honest with you, I had many black belts who were really close people to me, but nothing compares to giving a black belt to your son, isn't it? That for me, I think was my highlight of all my black belts. Because, I remember back in the very old days when he was with me, he was like probably, my son is 20 years younger than me, so it's not really much my son, it's more my brother, isn't it? But I remember I was what, 30, he was 10. He was training, rocking in a gym with like only black belts, where I used to go to these little private classes. I used to have my instructor. Only brown and black belts were allowed, and I could go there because I actually was exchanging private classes for sushi. But the condition was I had to train with you guys. I don't want to train with the white belt. Are you sure about that? Yes, I want to learn, and I want to learn quick. Oh my! Tell you what, that was the biggest nightmare I've ever had in my life. Those class, all this black belt. But my Felipe was there, and so to see him from there to now, and a long journey. He's been training jiu-jitsu, nearly, yeah, same time that I have, 30 years. And yeah, so for me, I think that was the highlight of all black belt, to see my son become a black belt. Yeah. And I got my daughter, my youngest daughter, I got a 10-year-old daughter. She's a gray belt now, and she's been training for four days, minimum sessions every day, every week here in Hobart, and she's hopefully my next black belt.
I have to ask you as well. I don't think there's many Brazilians in Tasmania. As a Brazilian, how do you find the Hobart weather? Because
Oh,
my
literally ask me.
previous coach, Tiago Stefanuti in
I
Melbourne,
met
used to hate it. So yeah,
met Thiago here for the first time. I had a chance to meet him here. We go for the same team in Brazil, so we got along really well because of that. He's a really nice guy too. And uh, look, if you ask me, I prefer the warm weather. Yeah, I really, for me, it's the thing that I'm really close. I'm really connected to ocean. I really need to swim in the ocean, and as most Brazilians, and so the cold doesn't really bother me that much, but the lack of swimming bothers me. You know what I mean? And and I try. I try in the winter. I go, no, I'm sweating. I'll go. It's so hot in Hobart because you guys are cold in Melbourne. So imagine us here in Hobart. So some days are just impossible, man. And like I was telling Brenda too, this is summer. We already had 4 days to go to the beach here in Hobart. 4 whole days, man. That was incredible. Some kind of record. It gets some days hot, but I don't struggle as much as I thought I was going to. But in saying that, another 3 weeks, I'm off to Brazil for 3 weeks in Brazil on the beach just to balance it out a little bit.
sounds good.
Balance is what it's about, right?
Exactly.
Exactly. All right. Thank you once again, Fabio, for giving up your time.
My pleasure.
You have been very, very accommodating to us, and I've enjoyed. I'm sure our listeners also have enjoyed these stories. I'll have to come down to Tassie and have another roll with you, like I did last year. It was great.
More than
Um,
welcome. You too, Brentos. Anytime you want, come over.
yeah.
More than welcome.
Thank you. Thank you.
And we have just a bit of a pop quiz here, a few quick
Yeah.
questions. You can make the
Okay.
answers as long or as short as you'd like.
Okay.
All right, let's do this. iPhone or Samsung?
iPhone.
Strength or flexibility?
Both.
Guard pull or takedown?
Take down.
So Brazilian. Steak or chicken?
Steak.
Pasta or rice?
Oh, I'll go with pasta.
All right. What's your favorite belt that you've been at?
Purple.
Why? We love this. This is probably one of my favorite questions because everybody has we usually quite often will get the guest saying purple, We've had
Yeah,
one person say white belt, and then we've had a few say black. No one says brown.
yeah. For blue. I think, look, to be honest with you, where I've learned really who I am in jiu-jitsu, when I had the chance to develop my jiu-jitsu, more conscious about, where to go, what am I looking for, it was definitely the black belt. Yeah, I've been a black belt for 18 years now, so I don't remember anything different than that, to be honest with you. But
Yeah.
I remember the purple belt was a belt that I really start getting my wings out, you know what I mean, and having the opportunity to feel that I at least I knew something, and you have, I think it was, but what I'm trying to say is it was the first time that I was really willing to experiment, you know what I mean. Whereas the blue belt, I was still like, oh, close guard, no, I don't want to, you know what I mean? And the purple belt, I was like, man, like, let's open more the guard and open and play more, which we know, man. If you want to learn, that's the way you have to do it, isn't it? You gotta open yourself up, experiment as much as you possibly can in all areas of jiu-jitsu, because that's the only way you learn. You know what I mean? So
I
that's what.
heard once that they were describing the belts if they were like stages of life. I heard that the purple belt is like the teenage years where you feel like you have all the answers. And
Yeah,
I think I agree with that too, because that
I'm,
is where you start to test your
yeah,
independence or test
yeah,
yourself. You've got sort of some of the foundations, you can do the things, but it's where you start to head towards that adulthood and to the later stages, maybe.
yeah, absolutely. I agree with you completely. Yeah, but yeah, it's funny because black belt for so long, and definitely like, knowledge wise, accumulated way more knowledge as a black belt because you're more aware of all the areas. But as you say, teenager, yeah, let's go party. Ooh, I didn't know that's gonna happen. But you know what I mean. So yeah, that was different.
Nice. I like it. What's your favorite at the moment? Gi or no gi?
I retired from no game. When Neil came back from the nationals in August last year. And I was saying he won, and I was like,
Yeah.
"Congratulations, you're official no-gi coach and fusion jiu-jitsu." See you later. The thing, like, I love no-gi training. I love it. Man, I competed a lot in no-gi,
Yeah.
but it hurts my body too much,
Yeah.
man. Just too fast, too jolty, boom, boom. And at my age, I got another 980 rotations on my shoulder, and I have to use them wisely now because yeah, it's like I just finished had not my 7th knee operation, man. So I have to be very. The gi slows things down. It's more technical. You know what I mean? So I think it's a good way to finish your career in jiu-jitsu. I had a roll no gi the other day. I was bugging, man, and it just reinforced my theory that my times with no gi are pretty much done.
All right, mate. We've got two more for you.
Go for it.
The first one is, can you drive a manual car?
Oh, of course.
Beautiful. We like that one. And then the last one, mate. This one decides whether the podcast goes out. Do you wear Crocs?
No.
Mate, we can release it, Kim. This is perfect. This is what we wanted to hear.
Yes, we did. We did. We have very much enjoyed this, as I said. Thank you for coming on, especially being so accommodating with my
My
technical
pleasure,
issues
guy.
I had today. We'll have this episode out in a couple of weeks. If you could share it, that would be
Oh,
fantastic.
my pleasure.
Any of our listeners, if you're in Hobart, please go do check out Fabio's Gym Fusion. He's an amazing role, and yeah, anybody. I also forgot to mention at the start that Fabio came by way of recommendation. So anybody that has any other people that you'd like to see as guests on this show, please do let us know. We love to get to know everybody in the jiu-jitsu community. Brentos, you
Thanks,
want to give
guys.
it
Keep doing what you're doing. This is awesome.
Mate, we appreciate it. Thank you for coming on and telling us those stories too. It's as we say, like, yeah, they're out there now. We can listen back to them and remember the names of the past. Because one day they're not going to be here, or we will be learning about these people. Like some
Absolutely.
people won't know who these people are, and to go back through some of the history of jiu-jitsu in Australia is really, really cool. So, thank you for jumping on. But that's it for another episode of Roll or Die, guys. We hope that you really enjoyed it. We're sure that you did. Fabio was an amazing guest. Thank you for your support. Remember to like, rate, and share the podcast. Tell your teammates, tell your training partners, tell your coaches, tell your white belts. Get it out there as much as you can, because by doing that, we get these amazing conversations with people like Fabio. So, mate, thank you for coming on, and we will see everybody next week on another episode of Roll or Die. Peace.
See ya.